for some analysis, we can bring in our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Doug, good to see you.
Hello, Allison.
You have described this as a do-or-die moment for Ukraine. Just how bad is it?
I know, and it sounds like we've been saying it for months, but it really is. We're down to the wire here. And even if it isn't every single day, we have an immediate hook into the story. The overall assessment is that Ukraine, the bottom line is, Ukraine depends on air defense systems and artillery for its survival right now. It depends on weapons mostly provided by the West if it is going to not just win the war, survive the war. So it's existential. What Ukraine's foreign minister, Dmytro Kuleba, we talk about him quite a lot, he is now basically coming out and he's saying it in no uncertain terms. Nice and quiet diplomacy to the West didn't work. He said that in an interview this week to the Washington Post newspaper. What is he also saying? So what does that mean? He's talking tough now. He's basically pointing the finger at the West. Yes, they're still grateful. Thank you for all your weapons. But here's the deal. He says the West and its armies, Europe, U.S., he believes they have 100 Patriot missile batteries, air defense battery systems. The Patriots, you know, those U.S. design, each one cost $1 billion. Ukraine has about 3 to 5 of them for the entire country right now, spread very thin. We don't know exactly where they're deployed, but they're extremely effective by all military accounts in knocking anything out of the sky that flies, whether it's a missile or an aircraft or a drone. They need them. So Kuleba basically says he believes the West is hiding, not hiding, but has about 100 Patriots, Western countries, in their arsenals. What Zelensky has said the country would really need to fully cover and protect itself, air Patriots we're talking about. It's about 25 of them. That would allow enough to cover all of its cities against the types of missile and drone attacks from the Russians, which have been gaining in intensity recently, especially around cities like Kyiv, where a thermal plant was bombed struck over in the past few days, and Kharkiv, the second city, which has also been hit very hard. All of those are intensifying. And if they don't get enough of these batteries, Zelensky says 25. There is the clear and present danger, this isn't hypothetical, Allison, that the Russian Air Force and its aircraft will be able to fly basically freely, carte blanche, wherever it wants across Ukraine without threat of being shot down, because that's how low they're running on air defense supplies. So 25 is top of the wish list. Zelensky and Kuleba saying, but we need 7 right now. Get us 7 right now. And what he's basically saying to Europe, he is pointing the finger directly and he's saying, guys, we know you have about 100 of them in your arsenals. Surely you get all of you together, all 27 members of the European Union, plus the U.S., surely you could spare 7. That's maybe 1 per country, even less. So that's tough diplomacy right now, but it's not empty rhetoric because Ukraine really is in this desperate situation, and air defense is a critical part. You mentioned mobilization, manpower, absolutely, but air defense in the face of these Russian air attacks right now and drones and missiles, key.
So Ukraine says the EU already has these weapons, but in general, Doug, weapons take money.
Yes,
the EU had kind of floated this plan of using frozen Russian assets to buy weapons for Ukraine. Where are we at with that?
We're still sort of at the same place we were when we first started talking about it. So you're like, so why are we talking about it? The reason, Allison, is that it ties in with the urgency of the question right now. There are some more animated, let's say, European lawmakers. One of them is named Guy Verhofstadt. He's a former Belgian prime minister. He's a liberal in the European Parliament. And he's basically trying to push the Council of Europe, whose leaders are going to be meeting in the next several days, to not focus so much on their budget. Yeah, budget's important, which is what they were going to talk about when the leaders meet in the next several days. He wants them to focus hard on Ukrainian weapons. And he's actually threatening not to even sign off on the budget, which doesn't really mean anything because the European Commission and the European Parliament doesn't control the European Council. They're sort of disconnected. But what he's basically saying is you've got to concentrate on weapons and air defense now, not because Doug Herbert's sitting on set saying it, but you need to do it because of the situation in Ukraine. So the idea was that there are all these frozen Russian assets, potentially 250 billion euros worth of frozen Russian assets in Europe and the U.S. The idea would be to not unfreeze all of those, to use the proceeds from them. We're talking few billion euros, maybe 3 billion euros, just the proceeds, like the interest on them, right, to buy weapons for Ukraine. That's the idea. You've had a lot of countries that have been adamantly opposed, thinking that will be an escalation of the war, using that money to buy extra weapons for Ukraine, notably Hungary and Slovakia right now, which have much more pro-Russian, pro-Putin governments, and then some non-NATO neutral EU members, including Malta and Austria and who else? There are a couple of others, but I have not and Ireland as well, basically saying, yes, we should be careful before we use that money. But there's really a money push right now and a push to focus on those weapons and getting money for those weapons in Europe sooner rather than later.
And finally, just briefly, Doug, you want to talk about Estonia as well. They're going to Parliament with an idea that could cause quite a bit of controversy in Russia.
Yeah, let me just specify. It's Estonia. Small Baltic state that knows better than most because it is right there up against the border with Russia. It has a history. It knows Russian aggression and what it does from first-hand experience, historical experience, occupied by the Soviets for 70 years. So what the Interior Minister of Estonia is basically planning to ask Estonia's parliament to designate the Russian Orthodox Church, headed by Patriarch Kirill II, a very close buddy and ally of Putin. They walk in lockstep and they think in lockstep, and they're seen in lockstep together, basically to designate it as a terrorist organization. You might say, that is going far. A church being designated as a terrorist organization, how do you justify that? Basically, and I'll end it with this, he's basically saying that they are no different in a way, ideologically, the Russian Orthodox Church, than any Islamist terrorist organization that is waging a holy war against the West and its values. They say essentially that's what the Russian Orthodox Church, by hardwiring itself at the hip to Vladimir Putin, is doing.
Oh, it's interesting. We talk a lot about Putin, but not quite as much about the church. Interesting to see what Estonia's parliament has to say about that. Doug, thank you so much, as always, for your analysis. That's our international affairs commentator there, Douglas Herbert.